My name is Lalin Anık. I was born in Istanbul, Turkey, and I was raised there. I was 8 years old when one night my parents and I visited a friend of my mother's. She lived in a large city flat in an old part of Istanbul. Imagine a neighborhood where apartments grew on top of one another and they raced for the sunlight. She lived with her husband and 2 sons, one around my age and one quite a few years older. My parents and I spent a long evening in their living room. We ate, we talked. I can't remember any of the conversations we had, but there's a moment, there's an image I vividly remember from that evening. I was sitting on the living room floor, and I was looking at these large windows surrounding the living room. Each one of them extended from floor to ceiling, and each one of them were tightly shut with curtains, thick curtains, curtains that were once white, but now are stained, yellowed, charred from cigarette smoke. They had smoked so much indoors that even their walls were stained. I remember a heaviness, a sadness dripping from their curtains as I sat there. A few years later, my mom's friend died of lung cancer at a very young age. At her funeral, I learned that neither her husband nor her sons knew that she had cancer. At her funeral, I learned that neither her husband nor her sons knew that she had cancer. She used to go to chemotherapy and she would tell everybody she was going on business trips. Imagine this woman. Now imagine her loneliness. She couldn't even be alive with her closest family. So at her funeral, I thought back at that heaviness, that sadness dripping from the curtains, as I wondered, how could it be? How could it be that we live in the same house with people, we share meals, we even share the same bed, but we might not see them dying inside? My dad used to say that at our family, we look into each other's eyes. If we see darkness, we reach in. We put light in there. If we see scars, we make them bleed so that they can heal. At our family, we dig deep into our relationships so that they mean something, so that we mean something. But how can we get there? We can get there by simply changing our questions. Let's think about it. There's a question we ask approximately 100,000 times in our lifetime. That question is, how are you doing? What happens when we ask that question? I actually went out on the street right in Charlottesville, right in front of this camera, and I asked that question to passersby. And here's what they said.
I'm doing pretty well.
I'm doing fine.
Okay. Good, how are you?
I'm doing great today.
I'm doing fine.
Doing fine, I'm doing all right.
Very good.
I'm very well.
Great.
All right, how are you?
One-word answers to a question that we ask 100,000 times, and we hear these answers 100,000 times. Are you okay with that? Perhaps it's not surprising because this is just another way to say, I see your physical presence, but I don't have time for you right now. There's a question I like to ask instead. And that question is, kalbinde ne var? That's Turkish for what is in your heart. I actually went on the street and I asked people the same question. And here's what happened.
What's in my heart today?
Oh, that's a good question.
These are the very reactions that we miss when we keep asking, how are you doing? Here's what we catch when we ask, what is in your heart?
I just arrived back from spending time with my daughter, and she just had her second baby, and so I'm full of love and joy.
Kindness.
Love. We were just thinking about our grandchildren and going to Tennessee to visit them for Thanksgiving.
Actually, I'm thinking about getting a job, so I've been trying to decide if that's the right decision for my family, so I've been thinking about that a lot.
Gratitude for my children and my grandchildren.
Missing my family.
My heart knows they about to be truthful and lovable and have a good heart and a good mind and be in the good law.
Joy is in my heart. My husband just had a good visit at the hospital.
God is awesome and He is good, and I just am filled with thanksgiving.
Anxiety.
What?
Supposedly here to take a little bit of a break from work and home, and just having a hard time separating out from the office, responsibilities, and all of that. So I'm just struggling with it.
So when we change our questions, a few things happen. One, people start talking longer. I actually ran an experiment, and I took a group of participants, and I asked them either, how are you doing, or what is in your heart? And what I found was that when I changed the question, people spoke 5 times longer. You might be thinking, come on, I don't want to spend 5 times longer every time I want to ask somebody, how are you doing, right? But what if once in a while, you change your question and take a moment and look into their eyes? Another thing happens, people open their hearts, more emotions become available to us. That lady whose husband had a good visit to the hospital, we see so much love there, years of love and relief. And with that college student who sighed first and talked about missing his family, we all know what it means to long for home. It touched me differently, having been away from home for 14 years. You might also be thinking, well, this is all nice, but I am not the type of person to ask these questions. It's not me. I would feel ridiculous asking these. Actually, it will put me in awkward situations with people. Or you might be thinking, well, she asked and she got these answers, but what if I ask and there's this awkward silence? And it's just we look at each other and we get alienated. I want to tell you about a man who used to work at a hospital, and he used to conduct these intake questionnaires. These are the questions that you get asked when you are admitted to a hospital. They might ask you things like, do you smoke? Do you drink? And with what frequency, if you do? What is your family medical history? Then there are other questions that he asks, mental health related questions, such as, do you hear voices coming from your TV when it's off? So he went to his supervisor and said, this is all great, but I cannot ask these questions anymore. I feel so uncomfortable. And then here's what she said. She said, keep on asking these questions. Those who don't hear voices will say, no, and they will move on. But those who do might say something like, it's not my TV, but you should see my toaster. My toaster talks so loud at night, and I can't sleep. And they will also be glad that you asked, relieved. So perhaps changing our questions are not only for us, it's for people around us. Maybe, perhaps by changing our question, it's like we're giving them a hand, and for people to hold on so we can pull them out of those dark rooms, open those curtains. There's another question we ask very often, perhaps as often, and that is, what do you do? Here's what happens when we ask that question.
Computer engineering.
Unemployed.
I teach yoga.
I study at UVA.
I'm an HR consultant.
I cook and I've been in the restaurant industry for 40 years.
Work at Burger King for 9 years. Clean up and whatever. Wash dishes.
I'm retired for about 20 years now.
Den mother at a creative agency.
A real estate investment.
Boom, 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 jobs. When people talk about their jobs, we put them in boxes. Here's a box of a teacher for you. Here's one of a student. Here's one of a parent. People start wearing that persona, not only with you, but with everybody else that they meet. And they also start talking about only things that fit into that persona. Right? They stop talking about anything else that doesn't fit. Think about it. What box are you being put into every day? And when you and I are in our individual boxes, we forget to talk about anything else that doesn't fit. Our curiosities about each other's lives slowly withers. Our imaginations die. Our conversations find a box of their own, and every time we speak, we pull out an easy conversation, familiar one out of that box. You know what I think, I know what you will say. There's nothing new there. There's a question I'd like to ask instead, and that is, what gets you up in the morning? Here's what happens when we ask people that.
When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is offer my attention to the world. And then from there, I go into getting ready for the day, and that includes coming to this store and doing the best job I can.
We have a routine. We get up, we have coffee together, we have a little prayer, we exercise together, and then we take walks together. This is part of it.
The will to see my friends and hang out with them at college.
The good Lord said, you wake up in the morning, you have a nice breath. You think people are equal.
I am a stay-at-home mom, so I volunteer a lot, and I just look forward to helping people throughout the day and making a difference, actually.
Life. To be alive gets me up. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to experience every day that you're given.
Life. Things that make us feel alive. Sometimes they're our jobs, and sometimes they're different things. But when I was talking to people, I felt that when I changed the question, there was an energy that came out that propelled people into the day. And not only that, they stopped talking about themselves. It's no longer about me, what can I do for myself? And people started talking about others, their sons and daughters, their grandsons, their strangers, their partners. It propelled them. And they looked away from their darknesses, what they hid there. These are the questions that give us liberty to be ourselves, that free us to contradict ourselves, to talk about things that don't make any sense together. These are the questions that tell us it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to reach deep into our darkness and bring it out to the light. These questions through these questions, we can tell each other, it's okay, bring your lonely and tired soul here. I brought mine. So in my heart right now is both some darkness and sadness. Something that I carried, a bit of anxiety coming here. I was looking forward to meeting you, but I was also very anxious. How would it go? We're having dark days, we're hesitating. But also in my heart, there's hope. There's hope that we can start changing our questions, that we can ask something new. My 8-year-old self didn't know to ask another question. She might have asked, what's on that curtain? How can you see each other in such darkness? But we can start today, change our questions, so that we can save people out of those dark rooms. And I want to leave you with 2 questions. 1, what gets you up in the morning? Ma'am, what gets you up in the morning? Sir, what gets you up in the morning? How about you? What gets you up in the morning? And my second question is, what is in your heart? Thank you.
So I can't let her go quite yet. I know we're running late, but I have one more question. Help us think about what we can do now. What kinds of questions can we ask each other to help us make the connections that we need to make to help understand this crazy world we're in right now?
I think we can still ask, what is in your heart? That's both a risky and a safe question. We can ask it more specifically, what is in your heart about your job? Mm-hmm. What is in your heart about this election? What is in your heart today? Mm-hmm. Another thing that I try to do in my life is provide other descriptions to people. For example, I might ask you, Lisa, what color would represent how you feel today? So you don't have to tell me any emotions, any adjectives. You can tell me, let's say you feel like green. And then your green is different from me, so I can ask you, what does green mean to you? And then the last thing is, something I didn't say, but that's a tip, is that vulnerability, inviting that starts with vulnerability. So are you willing to answer this question yourself? Right? And maybe sometimes it might take you revealing something about yourself first. But I assure you, it's worth taking that risk.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.